very first question that every interviewer always asks is, tell me a little bit about yourself. The funny thing is I find that most candidates don't know how to answer this question or don't actually put the time into preparing actually answering this question, even though it's the most common question. And it's actually a question that I find you can take a lot of, you can actually guide the rest of the conversation based on this first answer. So you want to be very deliberate and very prepped for this answer before you go into an interview. The tell me about yourself question is a question that I feel you can plant many, many seeds in and allow the interviewer to know a lot of things about you that is relevant to the company or to the role that they can dig into if they are more interested in. So what you want to remember about the tell me about yourself question is to plant all the mini seeds about yourself that potentially would help your candidacy if the interviewer asks you more about that specific point. So you don't want to go too long and you don't want to tell a whole life story. You just want to write down all the things that are interesting and specifically make you uniquely fit for this role, and then plant the seeds so that if they're interested in learning more about those things, they can ask you a follow-up question after it. I also find another thing that's important about this specific question is to almost answer questions that you already think they might have concerns about, but get ahead of the curve and answer it during this question. So an example might be if you are a career shifter and you had multiple careers beforehand, what you might think the interviewer is thinking in their head is this person going to make another career shift in a couple years, and is this person is just trying to see if this is the industry for them? You might want to answer that ahead of time so that you're answering their concerns if in case you don't have a chance to say it in a question later on. So you might say something like, oh, I learned from all my past experiences that software development is definitely the industry I'm interested in because of XYZ. That way, if they're thinking about it and they don't ask you about it, you have sort of alleviated those concerns ahead of time. The third thing that I think that is really important for answering the tell me about yourself question is that this is a really good question to assess someone's communication skills. Clear thinking and clear communication tells you a lot about a candidate. And so interviewers are thinking about things like, is this person talking chronologically? Are they making sense? Is this person explaining why they made a specific decision? Is this person seem excited and motivated and driven by answering these questions? So these are very important things to keep in mind when you're answering this question. And so if you have the answer ahead of time and you've written it down and you know exactly what you want to say, then all you need to focus on is the delivery of it. How excited you are when you're saying it. How engaging are you? And so what I like to say is oftentimes what makes the most sense is going chronological. But if there is something that you want to focus, like you want them to dig more into, then I say that leave that as the last thing you talk about. So if you think that there's one specific work experience or project that you worked on that is the most relevant to the position, I would end off on that when you're talking about the tell me about yourself. What I like to say about this question is to keep it succinct, but at the same time give enough information that it paints a holistic picture of who you are. So I usually like to say, do one sentence on the what, and then the one sentence on the why or the what you learned. And you go chronological up until the most relevant or interesting experience about you that is relevant to the job. Let's go with an example. So let's say you are a career shifter, you did a psychology degree, and you are now interested in working at a tech startup, and you've been programming for the past year or so. So you might start off with something like, I actually studied psychology in university. When I was growing up, I was always super fascinated by the human behavior and learning a little bit more about why people do what they do. During my studies and sort of internships during school, I realized that psychology was a lot more theoretical and not actually executionary. And so I still really appreciated learning about people and, building and doing something that relates to improving the the experience of humans, but I wanted to look for something that was a lot more executionary rather than just theoretical. And so that's when I actually discovered programming. I did it as one of my elective courses in school, and I absolutely fell in love with the ability to actually just build something and see it right away. So over the last year, I've been working on building up my web development skills. Something I really enjoy about it is the fact that I can actually build software to help people with problems that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. And so something I know that I took from my psychology degree, but also my experience in learning programming, is that I really want to work at a company where I'm building something that I can actually see the benefits of and see people use the actual software that I'm building. But at the same time, I know that the industry and the product that I want to work on is something that is helping people in their day-to-day lives. So to summarize, I talked a little bit about what I was doing before, why I chose to do that before, what made me make the career shift, and what do I want to do now. The reason why there's a lot of explanations around the why is because it shows a lot of self-awareness and it shows purposefulness in terms of your decision making. You don't want the interviewer to walk away with thinking that you just aimlessly made decisions and you just so happen to be here. You want to paint your story in a way that every decision that you made was purposeful and that you are here today for a reason. So I find that answering the why and explaining what you learned from each of these instances and experiences brought you to here today, that comes across as a lot more deliberate and that you are very self-aware.